Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the People Chat with Mona. I am your host, Mona Lisa. And today I have very exciting two women with me to discuss about something that I'm very interested and passionate about. So I've been a fan of these women for years now, and I'll try my best not to sound like such a fan while introducing them. And I'll also do my best to make sure I introduce you guys correctly. Our first guest today is Miss Denise Barnes from the Barnes Group. Denise is a seasoned corporate executive in HR, corporate affairs, and administrative compliance, as well as corporate communications at executive and board level. She works in strategic business partner, a business savvy, result-driven, and team-oriented leader who has experience in setting, measuring, and monitoring companies' strategic business goals and operational objectives for optimum utilization of staff nationally, regionally, and globally. Denise has managed multiple business units within companies with up to 8,000 members. Thank you so much for joining us, Denise.
Thank you for having me.
Oh, amazing. Our second guest is Miss Cebile Ulu. Cebile is a seasoned international HR professional and strategist with extensive generalist human capital and general management experience, an accomplished leader within Africa and global experience in leadership development, talent management, with a particular passion for development of youth and women. She has won several awards in her field. She's won the 2018 Global HR Leader of the Year Award from Mondelez International and 2018 Standard Bank Rising Star Award. Cebile is a board member of the Institute of People Management in South Africa, and she's also an executive coach working with women and youth in corporate South Africa and also the entire world. So needless to say, I have with me two superstars and a great example of Black women excellence. Thank you so much for joining us, guys.
Thank you, Mona. Thank you for having us.
This is just an amazing opportunity for me because these two women are not just superstars, they are so damn busy and they are more than willing to join us today. And I want to thank you on behalf of myself and everyone else who will be watching this episode and learning so much, as I'm sure from you too. Before we start, I want to give just a heads up to everybody that we are recording from 3 different locations, actually 2 continents also. So if there's any noise disturbance or background noises from any of our sides, I want to apologize ahead of time for people. So yeah, let's get into it. So thank you so much for joining, guys. How are you doing today?
Today is another beautiful day in the Bahamas, so I'm doing well.
Ah, nice.
I really am hoping I can make a trip to the Bahamas this year, Mona. I had the pleasure and the privilege of being able to see Denise and her family before lockdown. This was actually December 2019, Jan 2020. And then COVID happened. I'm in the Midlands of KwaZulu-Natal in South Africa. And that's been one of the beauties of COVID as well. If you look on the bright side, that I've been able to temporarily relocate to the beautiful Midlands, very green and very sunny. So it was another beautiful day today.
Oh, very nice. So I'm hearing an invitation from Denise to me and Cebile to come and visit.
Anytime. We're open for business, so feel free to come.
Next session recording will be from the Bahamas, where we're all together sipping on Mai Tai.
And I don't think we need the visas, Mona, to go to the Bahamas. I think you and I can just go there. We don't need visas, if I'm not mistaken. Definitely, as a South African, I can just go. I don't need a visa. So
yeah,
I'll try to check from my side. The invite that was forced out of me.
Good.
So before we get to it and talk about the topic of today, which is diversity and inclusion, I first want to also sort of like track back and talk about something you also mentioned already, Cebile, which is the pandemic. It's something that's really shaken up everybody's lives, I think, in the world. And I make sure to ask the question to all my guests about how they believe the pandemic has affected the workplace. And especially from your perspectives, what do you think has been the biggest change that came about from the pandemic?
It's an interesting question, Mona, because so much has changed in such a short space of time. I think we've not seen change at this scale, at least, for the time that I've been in corporate. I've not seen anything that this dramatic in such a short space of time. It's basically revolutionized the talent landscape, for example, where in the past you were constrained to talent within a particular location. I think now more than ever, corporates and organizations have the opportunity to tap into talent sources that they might not have had the opportunity to do in the past, because people can literally work from anywhere. Mm-hmm. Yes, we still have to take into account, tax considerations, tax treaties amongst countries, but in essence, your talent can be based anywhere in the world. And I think that's quite a significant impact from the pandemic, both from employers and the talent out there. I think the second biggest shift for me is actually on what we are talking about today. I think COVID has made the workplace a little bit more inclusive. And this is in my view, because now I don't have to worry about whether I can get to a certain place. I can be in any meeting from anywhere as long as I have, good internet connection. Then I can join meetings. I also think it's given a voice for people that, in the boardroom, sometimes there's 20 of you and you are intimidated. It's not everybody that can just speak up, right? Yeah. But I think with the technology that we are using in the virtual working environment, it enables even people that might have been shy to speak up, whose voices might not have been heard, to actually be able to speak, because now they don't have to deal with all of their issues that they had with being in an environment where they might get discriminated against because of how they look or of how they've presented themselves. Now we talk to you behind the screen. And I think lastly, one of my favorites, being an advocate for women empowerment, for the well-being of women in the workplace. Corporate spaces are very toxic. Not all of them, of course, but generally those of us who spend our entire lives in corporate, we know that they can be very toxic. We talk about things from sexual harassment of women, bullying of women, just being put down in the workplace. It's very difficult now for people to do that because we're not in the same physical space. Yeah. I'm home, I'm talking to a screen. The expectation for people to show up in a certain way, it might sound a little bit, vain or insignificant for other people. But remember how when you go to the workplace, you have to look a certain way. You have to dress a certain way. Yeah. You have to put your hair up in a certain way, because we say, people look at you first before they hear what you have to say. And for people that looked as a way that was different from what is accepted, those people might have been excluded from important conversations, from important discussions, just because of how they look and how they present themselves. Mm-hmm. Now you're talking to somebody who's probably wearing their pajamas or wearing their, soft pants or cycling shorts or whatever. All you need to see is me and what I'm saying. And sometimes I don't even have to be on camera. So I think those have been some of the shifts. I know there's a lot of other negative things, and I don't want to dwell on those. I want to really look at how I think COVID has positively impacted the workplace from a diversity and inclusion perspective.
Oh, yeah, that's definitely a positive way of seeing things. And all your answers are so completely brand new to me, because we've all sort of decided to focus on the negative side of COVID's effects. But this is a very interesting perspective. Denise, I also want to ask the same question to you.
Certainly. Well, in the Bahamas, and I would dare say for the Caribbean, two things that has come to the forefront very loudly, so to speak, due to COVID-19. The first is mental health. A number of people always either snickered or made fun of an employee who may have needed the assistance of the employee assistance programs, right? Because they always feel, oh, well, they have a problem and they have an issue and we don't need this person in the organization. But that was because that was that lone ranger, almost like what Cebile is saying. You may not have spoken up or spoken out the way you would have wanted to in the larger environment while everyone was in the office. Now you're recognizing that even though some people or most people are still operating from the privacy of their homes, the fact that you're not in that office environment, the fact that you're not socializing, the fact that you're not having that human touch is negatively impacting people. And so mental health is all of a sudden now being brought to the forefront, not only by human resources professionals, but by the companies in general. So I think that is something that is a positive that has happened. It's negative, of course, because it's mental health issues have increased, but it's positive because now you're talking about it and you're talking about it without the shame. And people are actually getting the support that they require. The second thing that has come out of it, and not all employees like to hear this side of it, but what has happened is there's an entrepreneurial spirit that is full blown. I can give a very clear example. When I first returned home from Southeast Asia, I had been already spoiled, so to speak, with being able to, when I was in Europe, being able to speed dial anywhere and have anything delivered to me. Well, I came back to the Bahamas, and which is an archipelago, a group of islands. So of course, things aren't moving as quickly in terms of from one island to the other, or even on this main island where I am. And I tried to order something to eat, and my sister was like, who are you ordering from? Nobody's delivering unless you want pizza. Okay.
Yeah.
And that was November 2019. By mid 2020, the only thing that wasn't being delivered to you was you, okay? Everybody now is delivering everything in the Bahamas. You can order whether it's online or just calling people up. So the app and the technology may not 100% be there in terms of ordering online, but what it has done is it has made a number of people who had to be furloughed due to the pandemic say, look, I have a car, I can drive, I have a personality, let me do this as a business. Or people who were backyard farming just because it was fun and something to do, now have gone into that as a full-time business. So what has happened is there's more entrepreneurs in the Bahamas as a result of COVID-19. And what it has done is for people's self-esteem, it has made them feel that, look, I don't have to be dependent on a company. I don't have to be dependent on a person. I can actually be self-reliant and make a lot to do about myself, which then jumps right into the whole idea of diversity and inclusion. Now we're not only looking as tourism as a country as the main source of income, but there are a lot of other businesses now that are sprouting up. And as a result of that, they're demanding a seat at every table. So they're being included. So it's diversity and inclusion happening almost naturally as a result of COVID-19.
Wow, I love that perspective. And I think it's the same from where I'm from in Ethiopia. We never had any delivery companies. I think there was that one company struggling to survive. And all of a sudden now there's like 20 or 30 and there's no one coming out every week. So I love that that's something that we could take away from and actually say, you know, this happened because of COVID-19. I want to talk a little bit about also personally how COVID-19 has affected you guys or impacted you and what you have learned from it. And, you know, what would you like to share with us so that everyone else can also learn with you?
Well, I know I had only been home for a very short time before COVID-19 was present in the Bahamas. And within a space of 3 months, in fact, I don't think I'd even served as 3 months in my then role with the hospitality industry, but we were shut down, everyone went home, and it was new because what it was a matter of seeing my country, who I know is just really very dependent on the concept of tourists and for people being here to go very quiet. I was in the industry when 9/11 happened, when September 11th happened. And I remember having that eerie feeling as well. The difference, though, was that we didn't get back to where we were. And certainly we never got back as quickly as what happened after September 11th. So it made me realize that even from a financial perspective, that there has to be multiple streams of income. Of course, we've heard people say this over and over and over again. But when when you're fully employed, you have a salary, you have benefits that are working for you, you're really not checking for the multiple streams of income. But it made me realize full and center that, Denise, all of the things that, quite frankly, and I'm going to put a plug in here for this fabulous executive coach, who I actually spent some time with in South Africa with Cebile, to talk about what did I want to do, what could I possibly offer if I were to ever return to the Bahamas, what could I offer to my country, and everything that she and I talked about in very quiet times in South Africa in early 2019 came to fruition in 2020, whether I was ready for it or not. Okay.
Wow.
So COVID-19 was a very personal development experience for me, for lack of a better way of saying it. And it made me realize that I did have something to offer, and I do have something to offer. And it doesn't have to be within the confines of a corporate organization. It can be, and it can't, but it doesn't have to only be there.
Yeah.
And it made me find my voice, and it made me use my voice and make some moves that ordinarily I may not have.
Oh, wow. I love that. That's very interesting.
Mm-hmm.
It is very interesting just listening to Denise speak earlier about this whole issue around mental health having not been a focus for many corporates, because we all know we've been there. So we're talking from experience that it's not something that was focused on before. Personally, for me, it became even more evident that this is critical. It's something that we can't wait for something like this to happen again before we do something about the state of our mental well-being. I think 2020, South Africa was at stage 5 lockdown, which is like the maximum level of lockdown that you can have. I was alone in Johannesburg. Schools had closed, and I had sent the children to my mom in the village. And then I was alone. And I had the worst case of anxiety that I've ever had in my life. And I think before that, mental well-being and mental health is not something that I had spoken about. It's not something that I thought could affect me. I'm a pretty strong individual. I've got a good support system around me of family and friends all over the place. So I never thought that I would go through what I went through between May and October of 2020. I felt like I was losing my mind. I felt like I was going to lose my job, because I felt like there were days I couldn't wake up. I couldn't get out. I wanted the curtains closed on some days, just because of what was happening around me, and that feeling of isolation, and the start of virtual work, sometimes having to be up at 6 o'clock in the morning. And I'm not a morning person. Denise knows this. She's the early riser. So if you are going to get me up at 6 o'clock to do a meeting, you are really torturing me. But my boss at the time was in Australia, and he was locked in Australia. He couldn't relocate to South Africa, and we had a business to run that was going through its own transformation. So it was a lot to carry, but also the fear of speaking up and saying, guys, I'm not coping. I'm going through this thing, because you're worried about the stigma that then comes and says, oh, we thought she was a performer, but now she can't, keep her life together. So I didn't talk about it. I didn't reach out to people at work. I had the help of a therapist. And then in the end, I think I talk about it now, but in that moment, what that taught me is we have to be different. We have to do differently as leaders. We have to be more vulnerable, more open to sharing what's going on with us, because it gives other people the license to then share their own struggles. I think I spoke a lot more about it afterwards, because I realized that I wouldn't want anybody else to find themselves in the situation that I found myself in, where I felt within my work space, I couldn't talk about it. And it's not because of something that anybody did, but it's not something that I had heard other leaders talk about. So I felt like if I talk about it, I'm going to be, judged as weak. And I decided there and then that I'm going to share it. I'm going to tell people that I went through the worst episode of anxiety just because I was scared of what was going on, because I'm human, right? And I think COVID, probably from a personal perspective, has done that for me. On the more positive side, I did say I'm in my hometown. I left my hometown when I went to university almost, 30 years ago. And then to be back and living here with my mom and my brother and his wife and the children and my family and my son, it's done a lot for my soul and for my well-being. So having that ability to work from anywhere, for me, has been a personal impact. I've gotten time to spend with family. I've gotten time to be with family when we've had, personal losses in the family. Over the last 18 months, I lost 3 people that were quite close to me. I've been able to be there for all of those times. Whereas when I was in Joburg, I would be in for the weekend just for the funeral. And then on Sunday, I have to go back because there's work on Monday. But now I'm able to do my work in the evenings, go and see the family, go and participate in whatever that is being done. And personally, that has meant a lot from me. And I think hybrid work, remote work, a lot more companies would have to get on the journey to making life as easy as it is for someone like me, but for more people in the organizations.
Yeah. Wow. Thank you so much for sharing. I mean, that was actually something that we barely ever hear anybody, especially on your position, openly talk about, but it's important. Like you said, we don't hear it. But imagine for people on my level at your organization, what kind of opportunity and relief they might feel if they've been going through the same thing. And then now I hear somebody at the top, like Cebile, tell me they've been struggling with anxiety. That would just I could just already imagine the impact that must have had. And I'm sorry for the losses that you've encountered. I think a lot of us have lost a few people through this pandemic, and that's been hard, but yeah. I think with what you said, Denise, it's sort of the same impact happened with me versus, except instead of moving back home, I sort of just quit my job and left because with the pandemic happening, it just felt like anything is up for grabs and anything could happen. And I know for sure I would have never in my life dared to quit my job because it was very promising. It was near my parents. I would have never done it had it not been for COVID. Now just saying, I'm done, I'm leaving. No good reason. I have no plans of what I'm going to do next, but I'm going to go. So see me off. That only happened because of COVID-19. And that's something that I'm very grateful for, at least the positive impact that it's had on my life as well. Yeah. So I want to talk a little bit about diversity and inclusion. And I mean, for my reasons, I believe you two are the perfect people to talk about this. So before I get to my question, I want to read out loud a definition of diversity and inclusion that I found on Google. It says, diversity and inclusion are two interconnected concepts. Diversity is about representation or the makeup of an entity, while inclusion is about how well the contribution, presence, and perspective of different groups of people are valued, integrated into an environment. So that's sort of the Google definition, and also the definition we see most of the time on HR booklets or anytime such initiatives come up. But I want to hear from your perspective, with your backgrounds and where you currently are. In your definition, what is diversity and inclusion to you?
Well, actually, I would say, and I'm going to take it from somewhat of a different perspective. In the Bahamas, it's not necessarily an issue in terms of diversity with having people of color. Like, let's say, for example, our neighbors to the north in terms of the US, people of color are still struggling to be recognized and respected. In the Bahamas, we have pretty much 80% of the population is people of color. The unfortunate thing, however, is that being a person of color is one thing, but if you have little to no wealth, then it doesn't afford you an opportunity to really be in the movers and shakers lane. And so what we're hoping to do more and more each day in the Bahamas is to include people of color with the financial backing to really be in roles of leadership and to be able to speak up and speak on behalf of others in the country. All right. So it's more of that. With women, yes, we have quite a bit of women in the country, but yet from a parliamentary perspective, we still have less than, I think, 25% of the members of parliament are females. But this is from a country that's very heavily populated with women. All right. So there's still some things that we need to be aware of when it comes to diversity. My personal pet diversity peeve, so to speak, however, is not about gender, is not about ethnicity, but it's more about diversity of thought. And this is where I still believe as a people, and certainly in the Caribbean and in the Bahamas in particular, we are struggling, I mean, really bad, where if I don't think and feel the same way as another member of the family or another friend or whomever, then I may not necessarily get invited to sit on certain boards or participate in certain civic organizations, or even socially being invited to parties, okay? So it's like we say we want this expansive network of people, but if you're not all drinking the same type of water, whether it's sparkling or flat, you're not really included, okay? People aren't necessarily given a chance to say that it's not about me supporting or not supporting one of the political parties, but this is how I feel about this particular civic issue, all right? The minute that I open my mouth, and if it sounds faintly away from what the governing party is saying, oh, well, you must be a supporter of the opposition. If you say anything that seems remotely in the lane of the opposition party, or you're against the government. And I have a serious issue with that, in that, why can't we have a diversity of thought? I don't have to be in anybody's lane. I don't have to be a part of anybody's political party. I have a brain, I can think, and I know how I feel. And today, this is how I feel about this particular item, and I should be allowed to be included at a table, at the decision-making process, and speak up and be heard as having a difference of thought or difference of opinion. That's my issue when it comes to diversity and inclusion.
Very interesting. I have a lot to say about this, but I'll let you continue, Cebile.
Oh, Mona, I can tell why you have a lot to say about what Denise is saying. I think she's just cracked it open and took it just beyond corporate. And if I can go down that route with our issues on the African continent, I think we'll be here until tomorrow
morning.
Because
exactly.
yeah, because one of the reasons we have so much strife, we have so many civil wars and all of these wars that are being fought across the continent, at the core of it is that lack of respect for diversity, lack of respect for the fact that we are one people, but we have different ways of living, we have different ways of being, we have different schools of thought, and we should be allowed to exist here with all of those differences. And unfortunately, we are on a continent where, we take it to the extreme, where if people don't agree with the way you think or the way you look or the way you choose to dress or your sexual orientation, then, people need to decide that your life needs to come to an end. So this is a very extreme place we find ourselves.
Yes.
I think there's something that gets said. I don't know who said this, but it's a very common saying that diversity is being invited to the party and inclusion is being asked to dance. And I think we need to move towards a point that says why do I even need to be invited to dance? If I am part of this organization, I'm part of this society, why must I wait for somebody else to extend me the invite? I need to belong where belonging then comes in. I need to be here fully. And once I've been embraced fully, then I don't need anyone inviting me to dance. I can dance if I want to dance. And if I don't want to dance, then I don't want to dance. And nobody has to feel like they need to invite me to the dance floor. So that's the one thing around diversity that I think as organizations, we really have to interrogate our programs on diversity, equity, and inclusion and say, are we really ready for what it means? Because if we are saying we truly want to build an inclusive organization, it means we have to accept that there are certain people or certain ways of thinking or certain ways of dressing that we might not like, and we have to be embracing of the stuff that we don't like. So inclusion is not about creating a box into which people must fit. It is about completely opening the landscape and saying, truly come as you are, and we are going to be okay with that. And I don't think we are there as leaders, as corporates. We just speak about inclusion and, you must feel like you are part of this organization. But if I don't toe the line, or I don't say the things that you want to hear as a leader, then there's something wrong with me. Just because I don't think in the same way that you think, then I don't make it onto the what is it, Denise, that we use for talent identification and calibration.
The hypo network.
The 9-box matrix. Then I don't make it onto the 9-box matrix. I don't make it to the top talent pool because my thought process and my views and how I look and how I am, and maybe where I went to school, maybe where I went to university, doesn't quite fit the mold that this particular company has created. And I'm talking companies in general. So when we say we want to be truly inclusive, it actually means we cannot identify anything that we can say we want in people. You just come as you are. Doesn't matter where you went to school, where you went to university, whether you've lived abroad or not. In fact, it might not even matter what degree do you have, unless you were hiring doctors. But in corporate, we want somebody that can actually do the job. But what does that mean? And I think we are not there yet. Bringing me to the next point, and interestingly, there was a session this morning on the same topic at work, and we talk about unconscious bias. Now, people have looked at me very strangely when I've said, I'm 43. There's no way that I have unconscious biases. I am very much aware. So if I, at this age, don't know what my biases are, then I'm not really investing in developing myself, in my own self-awareness. I'm not saying unconscious bias does not exist, but I'm challenging that we cannot be saying everything is unconscious bias and allowing people to hide their biases, their prejudices, their discrimination, hide it behind, oh, it's probably unconscious bias. No, some people are just naughty and they need to be wrapped around the knuckles because they are consciously biased. They know. So
I love this.
I know what I'm biased against. I know what my biases are. I know them. Okay, I'm not going to say them here for the whole world to hear. But as a professional, as a leader, I've invested and I'm very much aware of when my biases kick in. And I know that, oops, okay, now I'm biased against this type of thinking, or I'm biased against this type of, I don't know, age group or whatever it is. And I know how do I need to deal with that in a way that is not going to exclude other people from accessing whatever opportunity or being part of a conversation. And for me, this is a call that I would like to make to every person who's in a leadership role listening to this podcast, that stop hiding behind unconscious bias. You're grown. You should know what your biases are. If you don't know, go and find out and then figure out how to make sure that those biases don't cause you to exclude people that don't fit the mold that you've created.
If I could just get up and clap, I would, honestly.
I was just going to say, amen.
Amen. Reach, please.
It is funny that Cebile started exploring, or not even exploring, she just, crushed some topics that I was thinking to add as well. And that is, I had a session on Saturday dealing with team building. And one of the things I brought up was this whole concept, exactly what you're saying, Cebile, stop using the idea of unconscious biases for your bad behavior, okay? And I took it even to say to them that I know, and again, I deal with it culturally in terms of Bahamas, stop talking about, oh, well, this is Bahamian, so, you know, you just have to accept me as I am. Or this is what my grandmother used to do. Well, you weren't dressing like your grandmother, right? You weren't doing the things that grandma used to tell you.
Thank you.
Don't rely on her for some of the things and then discard everything else. I absolutely adore my mother. Absolutely adore my mother. Anybody who knows me knows that Barbara Barnes is the consummate professional, consummate love of my life, everything else. However, whenever she says anything, because she's older now, when she says things that are inappropriate and would have been okay to have said them before, it is my responsibility to call her out on them. And that's one of the things we need to start doing too. Hold each other accountable, because how often are we in the room when we hear people being inappropriate? When we see these biases on full display and we sit back, and sometimes, yes, we cringe, but we sit back when we say nothing, okay? We need to be held accountable for allowing these biases to blatantly happen. And this whole idea too, and I'm happy Cebile brought it up, is the idea even of age. It was one of the things that I had raised at one point at a company that the three of us worked with, and that I had said to them, look, you could put as many women around the table as you want. You could put as many people from the various countries, because I applaud the fact that you're great with making sure that every country around the globe is there. However, if the only time you recognize talent is the person has to be 25 and under, I have a problem with that. Are you saying that because I am 45 and older, because I'm not going to say exactly how old I am, because I'm 45 and older, I bring nothing to the table? I have a problem with that. Okay? So we have to be very careful that we don't say, oh, we're very inclusive and we're very diverse, but, comma, you have to be under 40, comma, you have to wear your hair this way, comma. And see, and this is what we do.
Oh my God.
We have the pretense of being diverse and inclusive, but then we disguise those other things under the word being professional. No, it's not.
Thank you.
That's not true.
Amen.
You put the definition to it. All right. So I just think that this whole idea of diversity and inclusion is somehow put into a very narrow box by a lot of companies, and they pick the easy topics to deal with, because you can't wonder if I'm black or white. You know I'm black. So okay, because I need a black person, let me go get Denise. Because I need a female, let me go get Denise. But you don't know what Denise is thinking. You're not allowing Denise to be her authentic self. So do you really want Denise at the table?
Yes.
You know, so it's just so many things that companies really and truly need to do to properly address diversity and inclusion. And Cebile hit it right on the head, man. They just need to be fully open, fully transparent, do away with the naughtiness of hiding behind this buzzword of unconscious biases. And then we have to also allow history, or what has happened in our family experiences, to also be put aside, okay? Because there are countries, and I'll share this last thing and let you move on, Mona, but there are certain countries in the Bahamas who use us as a gateway to get to America, okay? Now, I just had the same conversation again with people. People who are of a lighter hue, meaning Mona's complexion and lighter, are tapped lightly on the wrist and said, oh, you shouldn't be here illegally. You know, you shouldn't do that, and we need to deal with you this way. People of me and Cebile's hue or darker are made to sit under a tree while immigration decides what they're going to do with them. And then they put them on blast. And it's just the way that they inhumanely treat people of color in a country that is predominated by people of color just is mind-blowing to me. You know, so all of these kinds of things we have to really be very careful of as a people if we want to be included, and if we want to say that we're being diverse.
Yes.
All right. It's a mindset thing. It really and truly is a mindset. Nope. I'm not saying programs cannot work and programs can't help, but it's not a program fix. It can be a program fix. It's a people mindset fix. And until that is dealt with, and until we hold people accountable, and until the leaders really and truly want to do the right thing for the right reason, we can always have a problem.
I was just going to say the leadership thing. Sorry, Mona, I'm going to stop now. But I was just going to say that where I've seen this work, and it's been because the leader, the main person at the top, walked the talk.
That's right.
And made sure that he held every single one of us accountable for how we show up and the commitments that we've made and the inclusivity that the organization said it wanted to build. A lot of people say, oh, let's put in a program. Let's do this. Let's do the training. I mean, South Africa has gone through all of these trainings in the past. And I can tell you, nothing much has shifted from 15 years ago when diversity and inclusion for South Africa was a big buzzword. Because there was no leadership intent behind it. So if you and I and Denise in our spaces start calling people out, start holding people accountable for what they do and how they treat the different types of people, because diversity is also a minefield on its own, because it's not just race, it's not just gender, it's not just sexual orientation, it's just not age, it's colorism. I mean, you've brought that thing as well, where you're just like, hey, I just happen to be born on the wrong side of the what is that line, Mona? The equator. And then maybe I'm a bit dark. The sun did a number. I don't know why, but I get different treatment than somebody who's a bit of a, and that shouldn't matter. None of all of these things should matter. So if leaders can just take it upon themselves to say, I will not accept this, that. I will call it out. I will stand for what is right, what is fair, and what is just as a leader. I think we solve a lot of problems.
Yeah, I mean, I before I get to my next question, I love the responses because, like, I don't know if you've noticed, I've been really trying to hold myself back the moment, because I'm like, yes, and yes, and yes, exactly, this one, and this one. I mean, I love that you guys are seeing this from a very all-rounded perspective, because diversity and inclusion, in my experience, every time I have a conversation like this with people, the first thing they go to is unconscious bias. And the only things they want to tackle is, especially from a country like Ethiopia, which is like more traditional than even most African countries, and we don't speak openly about either homosexuality or different ideologies, politics. We don't even speak openly about like the colorism that happens in Ethiopia, just like the rest of Africa. But what we're always trying to tackle is women in leadership. And then we have these like token roles for women where they're actually given no actual power, and everybody knows it, but we do it just for the numbers and the stats. So I love that you guys are mentioning a lot of these things that are and should be talked about. So saying everything that we've said about diversity and inclusion, why should organizations even bother with it? In your opinion, what good can come out of like these diversity and inclusion, the programs or the culture, mindset, those sort of things?
Well, what it would do is bring a level of awareness. Okay, just like everything else, you can't address it until it's called out. And if it isn't, if you're in an organization where people are not included and you can see that the landscape is not diverse, then by all means you need to introduce it as a program. But it should not be a one-off program. It shouldn't be when we're not so busy, let's deal with it program. It has to be totally infiltrated, and that's the word I intentionally use. It has to be infiltrated into every team, into every department, because see, that's the other thing, what I've found, and I'm sure Cebile has found it as well. There are certain companies who feel that, well, let's put the women in leadership role but let's put them in HR. They do that well. Let's put them in corporate relations. We may even, but let's put them in marketing. But no. We have no place for them in finance. We have no place for them in this. We have no place for them in that. So we have to be very careful too that it's infiltrated throughout the entire organization. Okay. And then, like Cebile says, the leader has to really walk the walk, talk the talk. But so what I would almost do, what I would recommend to any company is start with your senior leadership team. It has to. No, it doesn't make any sense talking about diversity and inclusion at the line level, at the manager's level, even at the senior manager's level. It has to start at the head. And if it means you need to take a year or 2 years getting them to understand it, my thing is don't move from right there until you fix that. And then after you fix that, what's going to happen is it's going to be a natural thing where you're going to see inclusion and diversity happening in these teams because it's automatically cascaded. When you have to fill positions and the leader should now be saying, but why are you getting another 20-year-old or why are you getting another 50-year-old? Why don't you look at someone younger? Why don't you look at someone older? What is this person's system? Is this person prepared to counter what you're saying and to bring some real ideas to the table? So they have to have a very challenging mindset to everybody else, but they can't do it if they're stuck on not being diverse.
I know we've got probably 3 minutes with Denise, Mona, and I'm going to be very quick, but I've got a few points. One, when you say why should companies even bother with diversity and inclusion and belonging, companies thrive on innovation, right? If you don't innovate as a company, you don't bring new ideas, new ways of doing things, enter new markets, bring new products to your portfolio. I think we've seen it with some of the big mobile giants who've gone under because they didn't innovate. Now, innovation means you have to get different perspectives, different ideas until you come out with what works. You imagine you only have a homogeneous group of people in your organization who are all 30 or all 50 or I don't care, or all 25, are all white, are all women, they all come from the same place, they all went to the same university, and imagine that versus an organization that has access to so many different thinking styles, so many different experiences, so many different backgrounds, so many different frames of mind or lenses through which people view life, because you and I don't view life differently because we have different backgrounds. But when we come together, you bring your perspective, I bring my perspective, Denise brings her perspective, we come from different countries, we're different ages, we've gone to different universities, we've lived in different parts of the world, and we bring all of that. Imagine the magic that comes out of that versus people who all think the same way because they have the same experiences and they know only that which they know. So for me, I think if any organization is hoping to really win now and in the future, they have to tap into this diversity of talent that we've got. And I think the last thing I want to say on why we should do it, there's so many things I can say, but I wanted to pick innovation and I want to pick well-being. If you are in an environment that does not embrace you for who you are, whether it's where you come from, it's where you've been educated, it's how old you are, it's your sexual orientation, are you a parent, you're not a parent, can you speak fluent English, or can you speak at all, or you prefer writing instead of standing in front of a group of people and speak, and then the company kind of puts you in a corner because you don't fit the mold. That starts breeding toxicity. People then are not happy to be in that environment because they can't show up as who they are. You are not going to be able to keep your talent. People will go to where their well-being is genuinely cared for, where toxicity is stamped out by the leaders, is not tolerated, and where they don't have to fit a certain mold for them to be deemed competent and to be deemed to have a future in an organization. It almost makes me want to criticize the 9-box matrix, Denise, in any other matrix that says, let's plot talent. because the three of us have been in these conversations, and the three of us can tell all the people listening that more often than not, that process is very subjective. It's based on whether the people that you work with like the way you speak, like the way you dress, like the way you show up, like where you got educated, like whether you're a woman or a man. We know this, and this is fact, right? People can deny it, but we are HR professionals. We've been there, we've seen it, and we've seen decisions, questionable decisions being made on the basis of that talent matrix. And we would sit, Denise, and say, how on earth is this person an MD of a whole organization or a finance director? Like, how did this happen? And everybody knows it, but they are number 9 on the talent matrix, top talent, hypo, whatever. So it almost makes me say HR leaders have to also start dismantling these HR processes that don't really do organizations a great deal of good when it comes to really building inclusive cultures. That's what I will say on that.
I see a lot of cynicism behind inclusion and diversity programs, with myself included. I've also never been an advocate of this because it seemed to bring more harm than good. But I like that you guys countered that very well. But why do you think there's a lot of like cynicism behind it? And what do you think are the major pitfalls for inclusion and diversity programs? Denise, I know we have just a few minutes with you, but I would like to hear your point of view.
Sure. Well, the cynicism comes from two sides, I believe. I believe one, there really isn't a genuine interest. And so therefore, it's not even necessarily cynicism, it's disdain. It's like, why do we have to do this foolishness? We have a business to run. I don't have time to wonder if Denise feels included or that Cebile is from a different township. I don't care about that, all right? So that's one side. The second side is that Denise recognizes that the leaders have a disdain for it. And so therefore she feels now that this is a human resources waste of time because they know fully well that the leaders aren't interested, okay? And so that I think is the collective bed of cynicism in an organization. What do you do? You really and truly have to first get the buy-in, and I know buy-in sounds very lame and boring, but that's what it is. You have to get the buy-in from the executives. If they're not ready, if they're not prepared to, as Cebile say, be the leaders or be the mentors and let people the role model what it is that they expect, then I think it should be delayed. It shouldn't be delayed without conversation, right? So I wouldn't take it off the agenda, but I wouldn't implement it. I don't think you should say, oh, it has to be implemented by 2022. You may not be ready. And to your point, Mona, what then happens is you do people more harm than good because they see it just as you tick in the box and you really don't mean anything by it.
Yeah.
You know, so that's, yeah.
Absolutely, Denise. And I'll add 2 things, Mona, and then maybe you wrap up because I know Denise has to go. But one, when you see leaders showing the disdain that Denise has referred to, and there are no consequences, in fact, that type of bad behavior that does not build an inclusive environment gets rewarded. So somebody is known to be very corrosive, to be breeding a culture of toxicity, but because the numbers are good and they're delivering the financial results, we'll keep them and we'll promote them. Yeah. So stuff like that, I think, gives people the feeling that, oh, this doesn't really matter because you can be this person who behaves badly and you'll still get rewarded. So that's the first thing. I think the second thing is where people see people who do speak up, then suddenly face some sort of subtle and very underhanded retaliation because they've spoken up, then they get branded as troublemakers and they can't speak up, and then those people, you know, don't get promoted, or actually some of them just leave the organization and you don't know what happened. Those are the things that could potentially create people saying, well, we're not going to bother with this because there's no consequences. And if you do speak up about some of the bad behavior, then you get pushed out of the organization, or you don't get advancement opportunities. I think for me, those are some of my personal experiences in history, where I've seen that, a leader doesn't care, nothing happens to them. Actually, they get promoted for their bad behavior. If the senior leadership can then stop doing stuff like that, I think we can have much more faith in the organization that things will change. So sure, there should be programs, and the dialogue cannot stop. So this is one of those conversations that we have to talk about until we are old, until we move on, but we can't not talk about what is going on, because I think we wouldn't be doing justice to the next generations.
Yes, thank you. That's very beautifully put, actually. Denise, before we let you go, if you could help us bust one myth when it comes to diversity, equity, and inclusion, what would it be?
Well, I think the myth that diversity and inclusion is all about gender. That's and if you then have one woman added to 100 male team, oh, we've done fantastic. That's a huge myth for me, because I think it's the thing that is everyone's easy go-to.
Yes.
But like the Cebile says, that one female is invited to the party, but she is never given the opportunity to feel that she can dance when she's ready. All right. So,
yes.
and I love it. I love it how Cebile put it, where you shouldn't even have to be invited to dance. You should be feeling comfortable enough in that environment that you can dance when you're ready. So to me, that's the myth. Stop making it just about gender and acting like that's the only thing we need to address.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. Cebile?
I think quickly from me, DE&I is not the responsibility of HR. So people think that it needs to be the responsibility of HR, and HR must do something about it. HR must create this environment. It's not. It's a leadership imperative. It actually should sit with the CEO or the very top leadership of the organization. Yes. And I believe that it should be in their objectives, because if they are not able to create an environment that is diverse, that is inclusive, we have a talent retention issue, we have a culture issue, which will eventually impact the sustainability of the results of the organization.
Exactly.
So I don't believe that it's an HR responsibility, not by a long shot. And I think it's a myth that people think it's HR's responsibility to build diverse, equitable, and inclusive organizations.
Yeah,
fully support that. No, fully
support everything you both have said. If I would add one thing, it would be that, again, what you said about it's not a female only issue, but it's also not an LGBT type issue, because if not in our side of the world, we see a lot of times with corporate companies just put rainbow signs or put rainbows on their branding, and they think, oh, we're inclusive, tick, now let's move on. It's not a tick in a box, guys. It's, you know what I mean, of course.
Yes.
But that would be the one thing I would add. I think those were all the questions that I have had for today. I know for sure a lot of people are going to learn a lot from these conversations. People who are not ready to learn will just raise an eyebrow and maybe scruff, but that's on them, not us.
Exactly.
Thank you, Mona. Thank you so much for this platform. And it was lovely seeing you, Denise.
Yes. It's fantastic being able to share a platform with both of you from a fantastic continent. It was a pleasure working with you before, and I'm looking forward to hopefully we can do more of these, Mona. That's my shameless plug for Cebile and I to be invited
I would love
again.
that. Oh my God, that's just my fantasy. If I
Thank you for the plug, Denise. See, you are the salesperson. I wouldn't be able to sell anything.
I know there's so many topics that we should cover. So, I mean, don't be surprised if I'm sending you guys more invitations for more of these conversations. Thank you so much for taking time out of your very busy schedules and sharing your mind. This was amazing.
Mona, we're proud of you, and we just applaud you for what you're doing and encourage you to continue. Yes.
Oh, thank you.
All the best. Hope I'll see you if I decide to make a trip to some of the countries on our beautiful continent. We'll stay connected.
Perfect. Thank you guys so much.
Thanks,
take care, ladies. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.